Welcome to Bond Park. I'm Sara Geidlinger.
And I'm Marshall Ward.
And I'm Ben Snider. I am a naturopathic doctor and a functional medicine practitioner, and I'm happy to be here.
Welcome to Bond Park.
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 Thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely.
We're
happy
very
to be
happy
here, guys.
to have you here in Studio K, as we call it, which is, as you can see, my kitchen.
Yes, very comfortable. Very relaxing.
So we connected with you through Jacqueline Waddy, who's one of our favorite people.
Yes.
She's a longtime client of mine, her and her family, for photography, and she's been on our show before talking about the KW Humane Society. And she connected us with you, but I think we have a few people in common, actually.
Okay. Yeah.
One of my very best friends is cousins with Christiana Rakic.
Yes.
Who is?
Yes, my business partner.
Yeah.
Yeah, at Functional Medicine Uptown. Yeah.
So I know Christiana very well.
Okay, no way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is a fun connection. Like Marshall and I constantly talk about how small this town is. People need to remember that. Young people, when you're starting your business in your life, everyone knows each other, treat each other that way.
Yeah, it keeps you honest.
It does keep you honest.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
Absolutely.
So tell us about your work.
Yeah, so I am a naturopathic doctor, as I said, and have a specialty in functional medicine. But really, all that means is that I help people figure out why they feel the way they do. So if you come to me, for example, with a headache, let's say, my job isn't to tell you you have a headache, right? My job isn't to offer a diagnosis even, per se. It's just to help you figure out why you have that headache. And I think that at its core is what a naturopathic doctor is doing, right? It's someone that's offering insight into what your body is trying to say to you, right? What does my headache mean? Or what does my knee pain mean? Or what does my gas and bloating mean? And so, yeah, I spend my day talking with people about stuff like that and offering a bit of an interpretation, right? Sometimes I think of myself as an interpreter, right? Here are my signs and symptoms, right? What does this mean to me? So yeah, that's my daytime gig.
So you are actually, I think naturopathic doctors are life changers, game changers. Another cousin of Christiana's, Dr. Tina Rogers,
Yes, Tina.
helped me with my celiac diagnosis.
Yeah,
and
amazing.
when you talked about headaches specifically, I was living a headache life my whole life.
Oh, no way.
I just thought
Okay.
that's how heads feel. Like
Right.
You know, some days it felt worse, some days it felt, just kind of like stingy or whatever. But now that I'm living a headache-free life without gluten in my life, when I do get one, it's shocking to me that I was living that way for so long.
Right.
You get used to that kind of pain.
Yeah,
you know?
100%. Yeah, I love that point in that I think a lot of people are living in bodies where they haven't sort of realized the potential of that system, right? They have a baseline. They've accustomed, or they've become accustomed to feeling a certain way, and then it's only when you get to the other side of that you realize, hey, I was only living whatever at a 6 or a 7 or a 4, right? I didn't know what it meant to live at an 8 or a 9 or whatever that would be. So yeah, neat.
Yeah.
I love Tina, and
she's the best.
Yeah,
Like pro athlete. She's been on our show as well.
And how do the conversations begin if someone comes in and sees you for the first time? You sit down in maybe two comfy chairs in a room.
Yeah.
And you strike up a conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It becomes a bit of storytelling at that point, right? It's like, here we are. So why are you here? So what are we talking about? What are your expectations? And then it becomes sort of laying out a timeline, right? Because, a body is manifesting what has accumulated in those 20 years or 30 years or 50 years or 70 years, right? It's not just something that's unfolded in the last 60 days or 30 days. So the conversation starts with a really deep dive into what has that life looked like for you? What happened when you were 3? What happened when you were 5? Were you on an antibiotic for ear infections when you were 5? Did you have tonsillitis and need your tonsils removed when you were 7? Like, those may seem on the surface like unrelated, right, to what we're talking about today. Let's say it's headaches or gut stuff or whatever it may be, but it's not. It's deeply connected to how that body is manifesting and showing itself in the moment. So yeah, a couple comfy chairs and a conversation about that life, and then maybe a discussion at that point around how do we really figure out what's going on here, right? I talked about that why, but how do we really answer that why question? And that's where we get into a discussion around testing and what functional labs provide a practitioner. What does blood tell us? What does urine tell us? What does stool tell us? These are all an important part of that initial information gathering session.
There's an element of unofficial therapy with naturopathic medicine, right?
Right.
Where you really need to open up and be honest. Like, if someone's going to say, this is one that people love to lie about, how much they drink, right? How much they tell their, right? 2 a week. Like,
Yeah. We were just
in
joking.
the last 3 years, is that still true?
Yeah. My wife and I were just laughing about this. She had a question offered to her the other day that asked her, how many drinks? She said, the standard response seems to be about 3 a week. It's like just the safe standard response. But yeah, it's true. There's an unintentional excavation that happens in that storytelling, right? Where you come into that session not necessarily knowing you're going to talk about some of the bullying that you went through as a 10-year-old, right? Or a difficult relationship that you moved through in your 20s or whatever it may be. But each of those pieces of that story has deep relevance to whatever physical symptom or whatever goal that you're trying to work through in your health story. So yeah, I love what I do for sure. I mean, I feel grateful, right, and blessed to be able to sit with people as they do this work. There's no question. Yeah. There's a certain reverence that you have to hold when you're listening to someone's story.
Reverence, good word.
However that story looks, it has to be held in a certain regard, right? As each one of us would want our own story to be held. So, yeah, it's good.
I have this app idea. I'm going to put it out there.
Okay.
Get my copyright started. I have this app idea that's maybe it could apply to naturopathic medicine as well, but it's a Venmo or money request, so like a PayPal request that goes directly to your childhood bully or abusive parent or whatever. If they're still around.
Yeah.
And it bills directly to your therapist. Like it's a
yeah.
Because it makes sense, right? But maybe we could set that up with naturopathy as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Who really has to pay for this?
Yeah. Like, should this be coming out of my pocket? Because Victor Amorim, I think you owe me some dollars.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. When you really unwind those stories, how many people are connected to that, and how many harms haven't been righted. It all gets fleshed out for sure.
Because stress will do crazy things to the body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's funny, when we talk about root cause, right, and that why question, there's a number of patterns that are always coming up with the body, right? How is the microbiome involved with how you're feeling? How is stress, reflexing off the body and driving inflammation and contributing to the pain? Toxicity, dehydration, movement, food. There are certainly themes, right, that we often see, and you can't talk to anyone about any physical symptom and not deeply get into how the fight or flight system or how stress is involved there. So, yeah, you're bang on.
My parents were in their 40s when I was born. And so by the time I was 10, they were in their 50s.
Yeah.
And I remember my mom often getting up off the couch and saying, "Oh, my old aching bones," she would say. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
She was grieving the loss of a daughter and a son-in-law, death. Mm-hmm. And she spent a lot of time on the couch napping. And
was the co-partner of an alcoholic, abusive
that's right.
husband.
So she was dealing with a drunk husband, right?
Yep.
But she's not around to ask now, but I imagine what she was experiencing in her 50s was something manifesting into her body. Mm-hmm. That she could only describe as my old aching bones,
right? Because
that's actually, bones don't ache, right?
Right.
Yeah. So
there was something.
Yeah. So I guess people sometimes resign to the idea that, well, I'm getting older and this is going to hurt.
Yeah.
Is that what happens?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think there's certainly societal norms that exist there around belief systems and how we should feel at certain decades of our lives. And those are huge rate limiting steps for all of us, right? What does that belief about how we should feel in our 50s or our 60s or 70s or 80s really impact the body, right? And there's a lot of good research connecting like the ill effect of that belief system itself. And now, out of fairness, right, for all of us as we age, there certainly holds the potential then that the world itself has impacted us more, right? If we're only on the earth for 10 years, right, and a 10-year-old kid comes in, there's only so many things that can be going on with that body. They've only been here for a decade. Whereas then a 60-year-old or 70-year-old, they have, 50 or 60 more years of living, right, that can accumulate in a body and then drive certain conditions. But yeah, for someone like your mom there who had achy bones, there would have been certainly many things going on under the surface that would have been contributing to how she felt. And then I think that's where it just becomes access to information, right? The only thing that would have been different for her is she just wouldn't have had access in the time that she needed, right, to the information that would have allowed her to take that next step in her life and really figure out why she couldn't get off the couch and what was going on in those achy bones.
Or just this morning, someone said to me, they were describing their weekend, and they said, well, my elderly father had a really hard weekend because of the humidity, right? Even though he was in a fairly comfortable home. And he said, and my wife had her migraines. He said every time the temperatures and humidity get to be like this. Yeah. So I've always heard there's some relationship between weather and health. And,
absolutely.
Can you dive a bit into that?
Sure. Yeah. I love that question because it's certainly feedback that I'm getting on a daily basis because I also have an interest in working with people in chronic pain. So I'm often sitting down with people with osteoarthritis or rheumatoid arthritis or just aches and pains per se. And they're often sharing the ebbs and flows of that condition and then remarking that it is directly related to the humidity. And so one of the things just clinically that I've learned is the people that are giving that feedback are generally, and again, this is a generalization, and I always have to be careful when I'm sharing this stuff because it doesn't apply to each case, but generally, the people that are reacting to humidity are the people that have some type of chronic infection in the gut. So that humidity then becomes an aggravating factor for the yeast overgrowth or for the bacterial overgrowth or for the fungal overgrowth, in that gut. And so the pain gets worse when that infection flares a little bit. So let's just say it's the humidity flaring up the yeast or the fungus in the gut. The humidity goes up, then the fungus goes up, and then the inflammatory response against the fungus, right? The immune response against the yeast or the fungus flares, and we get this, the elbow pain gets worse, or the headache gets worse, or the low back pain gets worse. So it's sort of like why we add yeast to bread, right? We add yeast to bread
to make it inflame,
to flare it up. And so it's not unlike that, although it's a funny metaphor, right?
As I remember bread. I haven't had bread in a long time, so I just want to put that out.
Right.
We won't be advertising one of my favorite gluten-free bakeries in this episode.
You can.
Oh, I'd love to hear it.
Oh, Winnie's.
Is it
Belmont.
Winnie's?
Yeah, Winnie's is my favorite.
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh. And then they've got that the fun place out up near Deer Ridge. It's like
mozzarella
mozzarella sticks and
okay.
And I don't know, onion rings and stuff that's all gluten-free. I've been there once. It's fantastic.
And
It's
so
more of a fast food.
But that's not a Winnie's.
It's Winnie's.
It's also a Winnie's.
Yeah,
Okay.
It's in the weirdest spot. It's like by Costco Kitchener.
Okay.
Yeah. Really, really good stuff.
Very cool. Mm-hmm.
So I have some specific questions about stuff that I've seen on your site.
Sure. Yes.
I want to know your views about wireless radiation.
Okay. Yes.
As we are super connected with our phones in front of us, all of this gear in front of us.
Yeah.
Pretty much this laptop doesn't go, it travels with me throughout the whole house all the time as I'm working from home. Tell us your thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a big topic. And let me just think here where we should dive in, because one of the paths is a 60-minute path and
Yeah.
another path is a 5-minute path.
Yeah.
But why don't we go down the 5-minute path
Sure.
first, and then we can go as far down the other path as we want. So one of the things that I've found with wireless radiation clinically with patients is that it's really affecting two systems. One of those systems is deeply central to our body's ability to repair and regenerate through a night, and that is our melatonin secretion. Okay, so I'm seeing a direct relationship to the volume of exposure, right? Whether that's from a router or a Bluetooth device or a Google Home or whatever it is, and the amount of melatonin that can be secreted by the brain at night. Now, I'm sure your listeners are familiar with that, but just, for the sake of sharing what that does, it really is just putting the body into stage 4 rest. So when we break down a body through 16 hours of our waking day, we then need, right, 8 hours of restoration from that breaking down. And melatonin is getting the body into a state where we can do that repair. And so I'm concerned about stuff like that, right? Because we're always just trying to manage the breakdown and the repair, right? And in its simplest form, healing is just making sure that we're repairing a little bit faster than we're breaking down, right? And if we're breaking down faster than we're repairing, then we're going to be creating some type of chronic illness over time. So as I'm talking with people, I'm always trying to figure out what are all the levers that we can pull here to ensure that you're repairing faster than you're breaking.
So my mind would first go to what we know, but none of us do. I'm saying none of us, applying to myself. All of this stuff should be downstairs in the night. You probably shouldn't have a router plugged in under your bed.
Right. Exactly.
Let's go down that route. What are some practical
yeah.
things people can do?
Yeah, love it. So I think that is a really important point you just made in terms of proximity. So the router has to be as far away as possible. And we do have to take it even a little bit further than that, because as we know, we're seeing your network from 4 houses over, right? As we open our phones here.
Or
so
if you live in this house, as Marshall knows when he tries to make a phone call with me, my wireless network and my cell connection work way better closer to Marshall's house, which is 3 streets over, than they do here.
Yeah. So proximity matters, and to take that a bit further, we recommend patients get what are called Faraday cages, essentially. They're like these wired cages that you can put your router into, and all they're doing is they're just filtering out 90% of that radiation. They're still letting the signal out, right? So I can still get on that network and I can jump on my phone or my laptop, but the intensity of that signal is profoundly cut down. So that's one simple strategy for families, right? You don't want to get rid of your wireless router. I mean, I understand, the central nature of these things in a household, but you want to figure out how to mitigate, right? How to just decrease the intensity of that radiation. Now, it's not just routers, unfortunately, right? It's like you said, it's phones and it's Bluetooth devices and it's laptops. So what I think the other easy take home for listeners would just be to turn off as much of this stuff as possible when you're sleeping. When you want those melatonin surges, right, from whatever, 10 p.m. or 11 p.m., to 6 a.m., let's say, do whatever you need to do to organize your household around turning all of that off. So literally powering down devices and literally turning off a router. So in addition to that cage I was talking about that you can put around a router, you just want to turn it off when you're sleeping, right? So we recommend those Christmas tree timers, right? $3 at Canadian Tire. Plug it into your wall, plug the router into the timer, and now that timer will just click off the router or any boosters that are in a household off at 11 p.m. when everyone's sleeping, and then it'll just click it on. So you don't have to remember to do that every day. So,
but the router powered right down.
Yeah, when you're sleeping.
And then, I use my phone alarm. That's how I wake. this is partially true. As Marshall knows, both of us are super early risers. You said you're an early riser as well. We love early risers, and we love showing up early to things. This is who we are as people.
Yes.
I always say that we're obnoxiously early to everything.
Yeah,
Marshall
for sure.
and I. That's what I was trying to say to you. You don't have to come early. It's fine. But I knew you were going to be a few minutes early because I thought I know this.
Yeah.
I know this lifestyle.
The tone of these emails. Yeah.
So I never have to set an alarm, but once in a while, maybe if I've gone to bed really late, if we went to something and I'm gone to bed really late, or flight or something like that, I have to set an alarm. And then that alarm is, of course, my phone.
Yeah.
Right? So am I going out to buy the wind up alarm clock, or what should I do there?
Yeah, that's a good strategy for sure. An old digital, like battery operated alarm clock, right? That you can use, or just a phone on airplane mode, right? So you could have your phone there, depending on how distracted, right, you feel from that close to you, right? Some people, even if it's off, can't relax their nervous systems, right? Because they feel the pull of that messaging psychically around them, right? Yeah, I think that's true for most of us. So in a case like that, and you feel like that somehow is an obstacle in deep sleep, then yeah, just get a battery operated alarm clock and run that for your mornings. But I think it's important to say too, if I could, like, these human bodies are resilient too. And I think one of the problems in talking about some of this stuff in isolation, and this is true of all, modalities and treatments, is that you lose perspective of how resilient we all are, right? I don't share that information about wireless radiation to scare anyone or to think this is going to be the breaking point for anyone, right?
It's stuff that we kind of know we shouldn't be doing already.
Well, yeah, and just to say, it's this stuff in combination with other stuff, right? Like it's never, we're clearly all living in the cloud all the time, and we will continue to until the day we die, right? It's just the nature of where we are going as a society. And so I don't want people to hear information like that and be worried or scared that this is creating some, profound ill effect. It's not. Our bodies can tolerate this stuff, but at some point there's value in talking about what an ideal situation is, right? What are optimal conditions for my body in these 80 years or 90 years to be the best version that it can, right? And that's where the wireless information, I think, would come in to play for sure.
I would say when you put that all together, I think about also how the body is doing things that we don't realize until we catch ourselves doing it. This seems like a really small thing, but in the wintertime when I'm really, really cold, I'll notice that I'm driving and I've got one hand on the wheel and the other one is in a clenched fist. And I think I'm reacting to both the cold of the car in the winter that I never liked, but it could also just be a bit stress related too. But anyway, as soon as I realize that, I think, why is my hand in a fist?
Yeah. Love that. It speaks to how many messages the body is giving us on a moment to moment basis that we're just not getting, right? That we're just not hearing. And the simplicity of that tension is a really nice reminder, right? That the nervous system, to some extent, is carrying tension or stress that we haven't become conscious of yet. And I think this is a good, segue into how important it is to sort of bring ourselves back to every 5 minutes or every 10 minutes checking in, right? What is my body saying now? What is my body saying now? What is that mild irritation in my stomach saying? Or what is that really subtle ache in my knee saying? Because usually the truth is we're getting these messages way before any type of, serious condition or illness would ever settle in, right? And I think that's at the heart of what naturopathic doctors are trying to do. How do we catch this stuff from these subtleties as quickly as possible so we can change paths, right? So we can just slightly, take the other route. Yeah. Love that.
I'm fascinated by, you as a kid, you watch your parents and you see things and you don't really understand them. You don't give much thought to them until your own life experience catches up. You know what I mean? I have a really good memory of my mom in the car talking to herself. And right now I'm kind of moving my one hand and she'd have to be having this conversation with somebody in her head.
Right.
And as a kid, it seemed I didn't really understand it.
Yeah.
But as the years go on, now I find myself having a conversation in the car. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. In the same way.
Or little spots on your skin and things, tiny little things I remember on my mom's feet when I would nap on the couch with her. Well, now they're on my feet, right?
Yeah.
It's pretty interesting. It's like, now I'm there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how does that happen?
Yeah.
Especially the talking to yourself in the car. I think it comes back to I think it's stress related. It's some kind of way of getting stuff out, which might be a good thing too. Right?
Yeah,
So.
for sure. And I think it's interesting how children will imitate parents as a way of unconsciously communicating love for them, right? I want to be like my dad, or I want to be like my mom. And so we inhabit, right, and inherit these different behaviors or feelings or belief systems, from them. And so, it's neat how these tendencies or habits, will just sort of perpetrate generation after generation and manifest in us.
You start to see your kids do those things too, right?
Yeah.
Fun segue here. My mom had dementia, early onset, front temporal lobe degeneration. So this is one where you kind of start being a jerk first before people understand why you're acting that way, because the front part of the brain controls, your social filters and your critical thinking and all that kind of stuff. You had something up on I think it was on your Facebook group or on your Facebook account that was about saunas and dementia. Do you know what I'm talking about?
You bet. Yeah.
What was that?
Yeah.
Tell me what you're talking about.
Yeah. Well, just that a certain frequency of that heat exposure is profoundly cutting down risk factors for dementia.
My mom was obsessed with being in the heat.
Yeah.
She was obsessed with going to warm locations
Right.
and tanning, which I know isn't good.
Yeah.
And being out in the sun.
Yeah.
I don't think that she had any type of knowledge that
Right.
this would be good for her, but
intuitively
could not get enough of it.
Yeah. So, just a little bit of the physiology there. One of the things that has been found with sauna exposure, heat exposure specifically, is that it will release something called BDNF, or brain-derived neurotropic factor. So it's like fertilizer for the brain, effectively. And so when you get that heat exposure, you're getting these huge surges in BDNF. And now all of a sudden, one neuron can more easily communicate with another neuron because it has that milieu, right? That terrain is supported. If there's anything that anyone could do, if there was one thing that someone could do to cut down risk for, even just neurologic decline in general, right? It would be to get some sauna into your life. And the research is pretty clear on frequency, 20 minutes, 3 times per week. Okay, 20 minutes 3 times per week at about 150 degrees Fahrenheit is the temperature that, most of these studies have been done on. And, I think access to that modality is probably the challenge for most people. But if that's in your family tree, this is certainly one of the best things that you can do to lower your risk. Yeah.
That, and don't lie to your doctor about how much you drink, maybe.
Yeah. Exactly.
I found this so fascinating because when I would, and just hearing you talk about it, she must have been getting something out of this experience of being obsessed with being in the sunshine and the heat.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is the beautiful thing about these bodies. There's such a deep intuition, right, that we all have about what is in our best interest and what is not. Whether we listen to that or not is another thing, right? But on some level, every day we're getting feedback from our systems in terms of how we should move, how we should breathe, how we should sleep. Yeah, how much light we need. I certainly... There isn't a day that goes by, right, as I work with patients, that I'm not talking about the benefits of light on their physiology. Just simple, what it means to all of us to get 20 minutes of sun as it comes over the horizon in the east each morning. That is...
Yeah, wake up, people.
Yeah, that...
Go outside.
Exactly. all the downstream benefits of a simple behavior like that to our cortisol and to our dopamine and to our melatonin, as we were talking about before, like it, I think, yeah, we're constantly getting messaging from these systems that these are some of the things that are in our best interest. And yeah, we just lead busy lives, and we're easily distracted, and it's hard to act on some of that calling, right?
Because it seems like a reward you don't have time for sometimes.
Sure. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. For me personally, it seems like a reward I don't have time for.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And maybe a question on some level about how important is this really, and that would apply to the Wi-Fi stuff or the morning sunlight stuff or the sauna stuff. Like how significant an impact is this really going to make for me? And then as soon as we ask that question, then it's easy to,
If you Google Waterloo weather, I noticed there's this thing that has a drop down. It has a few questions that they can quickly answer for you, right?
Okay.
So it says, what is weather like in Waterloo, right?
Okay.
And these things always read like a police report, like just very factual, right?
Right.
It says, freezing cold winters, warm to hot summers, most days are overcast.
Yeah.
And I laughed. I thought about that. I thought, I think that's true. That's where we live, kind of thing.
Absolutely. And to that point, Marshall, like that's one of the comments that I'll get from patients. They're like, what if it's not sunny in the morning? Like, what does that mean? Or what do I do in the winter? But the atmosphere is letting through a ton of UV light still, and infrared light. It's just magnitudes less. So you're still getting all the benefits on an overcast morning like today. Just to a lesser extent. So it's not a full negation.
It's that router cage. We're just getting it through the router
right.
cage.
Exactly.
Right.
That's a great
When
analogy.
it comes to naturopathy, I always sometimes wonder, what's it like to work in a profession where there are medical doctors who are rolling their eyes at your profession? I've seen it firsthand in a doctor's office.
Yeah.
When someone I was with said, my mother is actually seeing a naturopath now, and the doctor said, oh,
Yeah.
no, that doesn't work.
Yeah.
I would think that must be something that right out of the gate when you're starting your journey, it must be talked about, and you all kind of come to some resolve about it.
Absolutely.
In a way that NHL hockey players go into the NHL knowing, well, I might get injured someday, and I might, something bad might happen, but I know this is part of the deal, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, that's a kind of an odd.
Yeah. No.
But
No. I know where you're going, Marshall. Like I think. First and foremost, the intention is coming from the patient, when they come to the office, right? They don't need any convincing that a lifestyle first approach is in their best interest. Sometimes, rarely, I'll connect with a patient that is really on the fence or just deeply ingrained still in the conventional model, and there'll have to be some education around an alternative approach. But generally speaking, a patient has already gone through that transition, right? Where they've been disillusioned about what it really means to support themselves. And now they're looking for a root cause approach or a personalized or an individualized approach. And so, yeah, it is tricky though. At most days I'll hear something to that effect, right? Where, an MD gets, wind that their patient, a shared patient, is walking down a certain naturopathic or functional medicine approach, and they'll be flat out, naysaying about it. Often I'll hear waste of money, waste of time, and then just flat out just doesn't work, right?
And communication can be tricky. Sharing of information, like if you need to see someone's blood work, or I know you can order all that stuff.
Right.
If you need to see someone's blood work, or maybe like test results, trying to get that can be tricky.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, fortunately, all of that legally is a patient's. So if a patient has blood work done, regardless of where that is, it's their information. So they always can call the office. But yeah, there's a lot of pushback for sure in coordinating care. And then sometimes there's not, right? Sometimes there's really good relationships that we are striking, with the medical profession at large. And there are lots of MDs that are referring into, a functional medicine practice or a naturopathic medicine practice because there's no dispute that 80% of all chronic disease is lifestyle based, right? And, stats like that, there's no debate anymore. There's just consensus that the majority of what people are feeling, they're behaviors that have been going on for years and years. And the question becomes, how do I intervene in those behaviors and create behaviors that are serving a body now? Yeah. But I think that's too where sort of functional medicine is coming in, right? I see it a lot like a bridge between these two groups of people, between a medical doctor and a naturopathic doctor, for example. There seems to be a little bit more conventional acceptance around what a functional medicine practitioner is doing, a little less skepticism, a little bit more understanding that this is more evidence-based. So, but yeah, we're certainly not there yet in terms of like a healthy marriage between, these two groups.
We're going to take a moment to hear from this week's sponsor. Waterloo Region Community Foundation wants to talk to people across the region about what matters to you in your community and your neighborhood. Between November 8th and 18th, they will be at libraries in the 3 cities and 4 townships to get your input. Take a few minutes and share what makes your community special to you. And if together we could tackle one thing to make your community an even better place to live, what would it be? No registration is required. You can pop in for 5 minutes or stay longer. Check out their website at wrcf.ca/dialogues to learn more and see when they are in a location near you. And now back to the show. If there were a healthy marriage, let's call back to like one of our first episodes ever in 2020. Krista Wise, young woman living with Lyme disease for 5-6 years, finally after all of this testing, gets a diagnosis from her MD.
Being told it might be puberty or just not wanting to go to school. You're depressed. Yeah,
she's depressed, and this is what. She's just being a teenager. She falls into the hands of Dr. Tina Rogers, and local naturopath, and she figures out she's got Lyme disease.
Yeah.
She's been living with Lyme disease for years.
Yeah.
Gets her through the proper testing, which I think had to be by way of the US, et cetera. And now she's living a healthy, full life.
Yeah.
Had that been communicated somehow in the beginning, could have saved years of heartache and lost high school and social time and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, 100%. The quicker that you get to that root cause, the better. And I think, this is where the professions could be doing better in terms of that communication, right? That there's no reason why a GP, a family doc, can't have some type of referral network, right? To a group of functional medicine doctors that are just looking at the body from a different lens, right? As a family doc, acute care becomes most important, right? You have a really bad infection, here's an antibiotic. This is where my skill set lays. And then a group of, functional medicine doctors that could look at that patient a little bit more deeply, run a whole nother set of diagnostics that look at infections and gut and toxicity and foods, and then just flesh out the picture more. So if you could imagine, right, a scenario or a system where both of those groups are working together, you all of a sudden see how important that is in supporting someone through their chief concern. But I think, it's tricky because there's so many like inherent obstacles just in the system itself for these family docs. It's hard for them in a 10-minute appointment to get anywhere close to the information that they need to make educated decisions about what's happening in a body. You just can't. I wouldn't be able to either in 10 minutes. So it's tricky. There are a lot of inherent obstacles there.
I think Waterloo Region must be a great place to be a naturopath now in this place and time. And also, when you look back, there must have been some amazing moments of triumph for you where a patient gets to be exactly where they need to be. And you probably carry that with you forward on a very probably high emotional level too, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's deeply satisfying to watch someone transition from an old body to a new body, right? From a body that is, seemingly getting in the way of them living their best life, whether it's deeply connecting to their children or deeply connecting to a partner or parents or just their professional life itself, like the body can get in the way of those things, right? And to see someone connect to those relationships again from a different system, right? A different body, a different mind, is deeply gratifying. And on the flip side, it's funny to be part of a profession where every day I'm reminded of my failures, right? Because every day I'm confronted with cases where we haven't broken through yet, right? And so I'm sure there are other professions like that, but I often sort of smile at that fact, right? Every day, is a new challenge in terms of the casework that we're doing with people. What haven't we done yet with this person to get them to the next level? What have we missed here that could be underlying how they're feeling every day? But yeah, it's good work for sure. And we're in an interesting part of the world for that work. At some point, I don't know if this is true now anymore, but Waterloo region per capita had the most naturopaths in Ontario. Maybe actually only next to Toronto. But there certainly seems to be a hub of practitioners here, and maybe more importantly, of community members, right, that are interested in this type of medicine and this type of approach because it feels true to them.
Bond Park is made possible with the support of the Kitchener Public Library and the Kitchener-Waterloo Community Foundation.
Our show is produced by Sara Geidlinger
And Marshall Ward.
with audio engineering by Sara Geidlinger.
Bond Park's original music is by Alan Lung. Harry, you still with us? We want to tell you about a fun project that we have. Are you ready?
Yeah.
We have another podcast called An Unscripted Spectacle, Wrestling with Wrestling. Here's Colin Hunter of Kayfabe News to tell you all about it.
Welcome to An Unscripted Spectacle, Wrestling with Wrestling. I'm Colin Hunter from Kayfabe News. Marshall is utterly obsessed with professional wrestling. Sara is utterly perplexed by professional wrestling. On each episode of An Unscripted Spectacle, Marshall and Sara talk with a different guest from the world of wrestling. Promoters, referees, journalists, and current and past stars of the Squared Circle to talk deeply about the strange magic of professional wrestling that has enchanted Marshall his whole life. Can they turn Sara into a fellow connoisseur of professional wrestling? She'll need some convincing.
I find out who Jimmy Corderas is. Who the heck are you?
Oh, well, that's a good question. For those who don't know, I spent the better part of over 2 decades working in WWF/WWE, mostly as a referee inside the ring.
I have the honor of meeting the magnificent Lufisto. I heard that you were described as the first lady of hardcore. I've just recently found out what hardcore is.
Yeah, thanks to Madman Pondo.
When I've learned that I was going to be inducted, it was like, it is now my time to tell the story of women's wrestling. Because so many times I've heard, oh, this is the first time this happens in women's wrestling history. And I'm like, no.
I learned all about the storytelling and writing process from Tom Casiello.
Yeah, I was in soap operas for 14 years. I was in Young and the Restless last. That was from 2009 to 2011. And so I thought, I'll go in for the interview. I'll be honest with them. If I blow it, I blow it. Not the end of the world. And I was there for 6 years. And I rose up the ranks to managing lead writer. And it was the most insane time period of my entire life.
I got a new skincare regime from RJ City. Checking out your hair, and I wish that mine looked like yours. You have beautiful locks.
Thank you. The secret, this isn't a plug, it feels like an endorsement, is aloe vera. I have it here. I put it on my skin. I put it in my hair. I use the gel. I put a couple drops of peppermint in.
I have a plant right there on my
Good.
fridge.
Cut it open, squeeze it out, and put it, honestly, wherever you want. It's good for you.
I find out that Colt Cabana is just famous enough that he can still buy groceries. And Tyson Kidd tells me all about the People's Elbow. Who knew?
basically comes to a complete stop, then brings his leg over the guy like he's going to do a leg drop. But the leg like keeps circling past the guy, and then he drops an elbow on the guy.
Oh, and the elbow represents like all the people of the fans?
Like
he's been voted, he's going to drop this elbow?
Well, like he started calling himself the people's champion, and then that move just became the people's elbow.
And then there's also, as you know, there's the people's strudel.
Yeah. I mean, there's the people's eyebrow. There's a lot of the people. Got a lot of people.
So check out an unscripted spectacle, Wrestling with Wrestling, available anywhere you get your podcasts.